Alliance. Now, Siege is the only dungeon in BFA that actually does have a different starting point depending on what faction you play. And not only that, there's some mobs who are also are a little bit different inside the dungeon, and specifically the first boss is a little bit different as well. So we will see those differences later on if Perplexed actually chooses to play Alliance compared to the Horde that Deplete from Beyond is playing.
Yeah, one of the big differences as well is this gate here after Hadal Darkfathom to this last boss opens up a lot slower if you're Alliance side than if you're Horde. So if you're Alliance side, you're kind of obligated to backtrack while that RP is happening and go get some trash then. Whereas if you're Horde, you can just do the dungeon in a more straightforward, linear fashion that I think is a little bit easier to do as well.
Yeah, definitely a difference there as we see the Perplexed actually playing Alliance, so Deplete from Beyond is still playing Horde, while the Perplexed does have the different starting point with the Alliance. They do have Shadow Melt available, so they can do this skip on their side, while Deplete from Beyond does not have the Shadow Melt, so therefore they need to either have somebody die, or they need to use some invisible potions, or they just kill all of the trash that they're gathering up here. We'll see what they do, as Perplexed is using their Shadow Melts to get rid of the trash they aggroed on their way to the first boss.
Yeah, you can see Deplete from Beyond here. They're thunderclapping, running their way here, and this is going to be a large amount of trash because, of course, they don't have Shadow Meld. Rentari, though, dropping extremely low. Of course, Necrotic is active in this dungeon as well, so it does need to ideally drop stacks here. Will be able to do that, and they're grouping up the entirety of the first part of this dungeon, popping that Bloodlust. They will be killing all of this at once is the plan. Perplexed, meanwhile, already into the first boss here. They have a smaller amount of trash here, but they have pulled it with the boss as well. Different trash, too. The Alliance side trash, a lot more nasty in this first area than the Horde side.
Yeah, and another difference here on the first boss is that even if you see the mobs that are spawning during the boss fight, the boss will just continue to spawn them. While if you are playing Horde, then you will stop spawning those vanguards, the ones with the frontal stun, if you just see them and if they're still alive. So a little bit easier for the Horde side compared to Alliance. And yeah, Perplexed definitely choosing to do a different route here with their different amount of trash that they do. They did pop their Bloodlust immediately as soon as they engaged the boss with the trash on top, while Deplete from Beyond used their Bloodlust for the trash only, and then afterwards engaged the boss. So already from the get-go, a little bit of a difference in strategy, which doesn't mean much because later on we will see a lot of trash being played with those spotters with the friendly fire from the artillery.
Yeah, both bosses here within 10% of each other. Perplexed, though, about 7% trash count behind where Deplete from Beyond is at this time. So this is, I think, it's really hard to judge the advantage between these two because the differences between Horde and Alliance kind of last throughout the whole dungeon, right? There's the difference later in the dungeon, too, with that gate opening. So it's really hard to actually tell who is in an advantaged position given just the information we have with count and stuff because they're kind of playing two slightly different dungeons.
Yeah, I agree. Perplexed actually downing the first boss here, so they can move on already. We see the Lightfoot potion being popped by Divine Field, gathering a lot of trash around the corner here, making sure everything is gathered. Want to be careful with the trample from the commanders, and I think on these pulls, this is why Hunters are so good, not only for single target, but also for these kind of AoE pulls, just because the pull is not over until the commander dies here, and Commander has a lot more HP than the rest of the trash, and Hunters are just very good at focusing down high HP targets while cleaving the low HP targets around it. They just have very high priority target damage, and therefore those kind of AoE pulls that they're doing are just so well done by the Hunters. As you can see, the Commander just died slightly after everything else, so well done by Perplexed getting that pull done. They're now also fighting Voidweaver, and that's definitely an interesting choice because we've seen a lot of the teams play Voidweaver with the last boss.
Yeah, Voidweaver has a spawn position on the last boss that's fairly far over to the left, and that means that your tank will generally be the first person and the only person in range of Voidweaver for its first 4 or 5 casts while it slowly waddles its way towards your team. And because of that, you can usually just let those casts go through on your tank and it's not a big deal. So that makes Voidweaver surprisingly easy to play with the last boss because you really don't have to start worrying about it until after the tentacles are dead. Whereas, some of the other ones, it really depends on where the lists actually are in the last boss room. Some of the other ones can be much more nasty to deal with. Perplexed, though, they've gotten kind of the best of both worlds here because Divine has gone back outside of the realm and he'll be pulling the boss. The rest of the team using this as a skip to the second boss here. So There's kind of a cool combination of strategies that we've seen. You know, some teams use that obelisk and don't kill Malthair just to get to this boss. Other teams use the obelisk and then bring Malthair all the way to this boss, and Perplexed have kind of split the difference. They're killing Malthair, but they're not spending all the time to bring him all the way over here. They're just killing Malthair, you know, moving him a little bit, and then doing this mounting up and using Nyloth as a skip strategy.
Yeah, and I mean, you can see the difference in trash here between those. Perplexed is ahead in dungeon speed as they're already fighting Dread Captain Lockwood.
Look how low they're getting Dread Captain Lockwood as well here. 65%
True, yeah.
full on energy, but if you Thunderclap at the perfect time here, it will be rooted and unable to jump back up there. Avatar has expired for Divine, so no longer able to keep those Thunderclap roots on Dread Captain Lockwood through that Conflict and Strife major essence that both warriors are running. But 60% is an incredibly strong amount to be able to bring her to on that first phase. They may be able to one phase or to two phase, like to kill it in one more phase.
That would actually be a really big time save. I don't think we've seen any team be able to do that just yet. I think all of the teams so far needed 2 intermission phases before they got her down. So let's look at the HP of Dread Captain Lockwood on the left side of the screen on Perplexed. You see the energy bar filling up at the bottom. Once she reaches 100 energy, she will attempt to jump away. If she's
they're gonna need
or knocked, then she will not jump.
They are probably going to need a couple of those roots to work out, but look, Divine is saving his avatar. You can see that is still available for him. Normally, that's just a button you press on cooldown. In this case, though, it's going to be something that he will hold until Dread Captain Lockwood gets close to that 100% energy mark, and then he'll be using it right now to make sure that she has a root applied to her every time she would jump back. And it need to be really precise here. They are going to be able to do it, though. That is really impressive by Perplexed. Killing Dread Captain Lockwood without her retreating a second time. Deplete from Beyond, on the other hand, you can see that is the second retreat happening for them, so they are completely unable to replicate that strategy. And that really required a lot of precision and skill, specifically from Divine Field, so really great job by him there.
Yeah, there was a huge amount of time saves. It really matters in the MDI in this kind of competition to get an extra little bit of a time save on this boss here. So well done by Divine Field and by Perplexed to get this done. Now they are fighting Samrak. After they have Samrak done, they have 2 obelisks left, so it looks like they will be playing 2 Awaken mobs on the last boss. While we do know that Deplete from Beyond is only dealing with Samrak, and they're actually dealing with 3 obelisks on the last boss. But they have a lot less trash to do on the Deplete from Beyond side, so they don't actually have to go back and do that many spotter pulls, which in the end is not going to be as big of a time save if Perplexed manages to pull off this spotter pack cleanly.
This is they're not even using the spotter for this. Perplexed is just fighting this the old-fashioned way. This is something that actually we saw a little bit of this yesterday as well. Teams just deciding that, you know what, all that setup time, all of that nonsense with the spotter, we're not going to bother. We'll just kill these mobs with our abilities because we're playing with hunters. Those are kind of like spotters anyway. They just destroy the packs just as well.
You're not wrong. We see the binding shots coming out of the hunters as well to help Divine Field kite. Not only is it raging, which of course can do a lot of damage to your tank if they all reach raging at the same time, but you also have Necrotic, which just stacks up over time. It's actually a really deadly combination having Necrotic and raging, because they're raging at the end of the pull, and that's the point where you do have a lot of Necrotic stacks. So definitely very difficult combination of affixes here for the tanks specifically. And Divine Field is also not running that Dwarf ratio because he chose to run that Shadow Melt with the Night Elf. So he doesn't have a way of resetting the Necrotic except kiting out the debuff.
Yeah, in a way, this affix combo is really, really difficult because, as you mentioned, if you're in the pack under 30% health, you have so many Necrotic stacks and you're taking all this extra damage from raging. In another sense, the good news about this affix combination is that the counterplay for both affixes is the same, right? In order to beat Necrotic, you run away from the pack at the end of the pull. In order to beat Raging, you run away from the pack at the end of the pull. So as long as it's a pack that you can actually run away from, that is something you can do. Meanwhile, though, on the side of Deplete from Beyond, you can see they are also doing a fairly large pull here. Don't think they have a spotter involved in this either, so they're just setting up for what will be their big Song of Chi-Ji pull, right? Is that what this team does? No, that's not this team. That was Ethical that had that strategy, and Ethical not in the tournament anymore. So yeah, but we will see at least a spotter pull, I think, from Deplete from Beyond.
Yeah, I think Deplete from Beyond is only doing this Hadal pull, where they basically, you see Kurisu here just camouflaging to the boss while everyone else is in the Nyloth realm, or at least the 2 people who do not have camouflage are in the Nyloth realm. There we go. Now all the trash is being pulled on top of the boss. This can be very scary because you do have those commanders who just charge around to ranged targets, and they will stun everyone in their path, which is deadly on this boss because you do have the Breaking Waters and lots of other abilities that you need to dodge. So getting stunned here is definitely not what you want to happen. As Perplexed, still dealing with trash, and you can see they're getting closer and closer to the percentage that Deplete from Beyond has.
Yeah, so actually no spotters involved at all in this strategy. This is just, they're just playing this dungeon straight up. Pretty much both teams are. Okay, no, never mind. Perplexed is absolutely doing a massive spotter pull here. Wow, my predictions are 0 for 10 or something in this dungeon so far today. But yeah, this is going to be a big spotter pull for Perplexed, while Deplete from Beyond busy working on that boss. So Perplexed getting that binding shot. They've got all those enemies out of line of sight of the rest of the group, while Swag with that turtle is going to stand in with the sighted artillery. And look at that. That is a beautiful job of spotter execution on all these enemies. That was the entire trash from Hadal's room as well. They will now be running into Hadal with those commanders still engaged, and they'll be killing it all together. So both teams on the same boss here with the same trash. Deplete from Beyond ahead, though. And Perplexed, playing that Alliance side, will have RP to wait for after this boss dies as well. Whereas Deplete from Beyond playing Horde will not have to deal with that.
Deplete from Beyond definitely in the driver's seat here. As you mentioned, after this boss is a Shine going down as for Perplexed here, unfortunately. They do have a Battle Rest available, but it's going to take a while because they need to use the Engineering Rest. So yeah, just another time loss here for Perplexed.
That is so bad.
Both teams had 0 deaths.
Yeah, actually impressive this late into a Siege of Boralus to have the first death occur after the 10-minute mark from either team in Siege of Boralus that has got to be a first. This is a very, very deadly dungeon. But yeah, Shine coming back up. Probably something went wrong with the Commander Trample, if I had to guess. That is usually the cause of death on this fight. when you get the autopsy reports from what's happened on Hadal Darkfathom, it's usually Trample that's there.
Yeah, definitely, especially when it's in raging range, it will probably close to one-shot you as well if it hits you, not only get the stun on you. So definitely very deadly. You see, Deplete from Beyond is still missing a little bit of percentage, but that's the obelisk that they still have left to do. Now that's the last difference between Deplete from Beyond and Perplexed. We do see the difference in 3 Awaken mobs still being active. For Deplete from Beyond, while there's only 2 for Perplexed, that means the last boss fight is actually going to take a little while longer for Deplete from Beyond because they will have to deal with that extra mob. And what we saw from them last time as they played that dungeon was that they were actually finishing their Awaken mobs in between the first and second platform before they activated the second platform. And therefore, that boss is definitely going to take them a little bit longer. But Perplexed, not only do they need to finish the boss, but they also need to wait for 1 minute before the gate opens because they're playing Alliance, and you get this extra little bit of RP that happens on that faction.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a full minute, but it certainly feels that way when you're standing in front of the gate just waiting for it to open. And yeah, Deplete from Beyond, they are now pulling this last boss. This is a hugely difficult boss fight with all of these Awakened enemies. First order of business is going to be killing this Gripping Terror within 20 seconds of the full starting. They have 4 seconds left here. 2 seconds. Barely managing to beat that DPS check. That was very, very tight for Deplete from Beyond, but they've managed to kill the Gripping Terror before the second Demolishing Terror spawned. Now that next Demolishing Terror is down, and now they have a little bit of time where they can just kill Awakened enemies if they want to. However, Perplexed may have the opportunity to steal this map from Deplete from Beyond if Perplexed is able to, shoot the cannon more quickly and be able to just go right into pulls. Wow, Rentari getting launched into the air there by a Dispel. Does manage to intervene back down, though.
And you see how difficult it is to play these Awaken mobs here. Not only is there very little space, and you have to kite the blood on top of also having the huge area of denial from the Tankmaster. And even if you do not trigger the second platform, which is what they're doing right now, they're not actually shooting the cannon, therefore you do not get the Demolishing Terror or the Gripping Terror on the second platform. But the boss still casts the ability where you can see the 2 debuffs that are being applied, the Purifying Water, which does a huge amount of damage, and Eagle cannot dispel both of them. So definitely lots of damage still going out in the group on top of having to dealing with the Awakened mobs.
Yeah, it is possible to speculatively turtle right before the boss casts the ability, and then if it would have targeted you, it ends up being deflected. That may have been what caused Curry to use his turtle earlier, but most turtles still available on the side of Deplete from Beyond. Meanwhile, Perplexed is pulling this boss as well, and they have dealt with the first set of terrors also. They are now going to be killing their 2 Awakened enemies. Oh no, Swag has died though for Perplexed. That is really, really the opposite of what they needed here. So,
okay, the one thing that would put Perplexed back onto the into a lead here, or would be able to, for them to catch up to Deplete from Beyond, would be to trigger the second platform before their Awaken mobs are down. But that's such an incredibly difficult thing to do.
They are shooting that cannon.
They are doing it, all right, there we go. So the second platform is engaged for Perplexed. Now, Divine Field has to tank the Tank Buster, the Blood, and the Demolishing Terror, which is so difficult because of all of this area of denial. And the Demolishing Terror needs to be tanked in melee. He cannot walk away, otherwise the group dies. You see Divine Field just standing in the Dark Fury, the Spirit Breaker being taunted by one of the Hunter pets, thankfully, because there's no way Divine Field can survive while having the Spirit Breaker on him.
Yeah, they're going to finish off Urgroth here, and Divine leaping away, able to just barely survive, and they are in on the Gripping Terror now. They need to kill this thing as quickly as possible, but Deplete from Beyond are still ahead here in progression.
Yeah, they're done with the second platform. They are moving on to that last platform for Deplete from Beyond. And not only are they ahead in boss speed, but they also don't have any deaths. This is a perfect run by Deplete from Beyond.
Is this going to be a 16-minute run? This would be a run on par with Wunderbar's time, if they can do that. This is wild, yeah. You see Rentari shooting that cannon there instead of anybody else. He will then have a little bit of time to get back to the platform and engage the Demolishing Terror. You actually have some time before the Demolishing Terror does the AoE. It's after it does its first slam is when it will then be eligible to start AoEing if nobody's in melee range. So you have a little bit of time where it can just have nobody next to it. That Gripping Terror, though, is falling rapidly for Deplete from Beyond. 24% left. Once they kill that, great spawn on the second Demolishing Terror. Both are tankable in the same spot by Rentari. So not going to have to do anything fancy in order to survive those two Demolishing Terrors. As long as Rentari just stays in melee range of both of them, that cannon will be getting repaired here. And the time is going to be impressive here from Deplete from Beyond as they surge back into this series 1-1.
Whoa! You'd love to see those big comebacks. Deplete from Beyond taking the victory just over 16 minutes, if I saw it correctly there.
16:02
big win.
Is an exact
same time as Wunderbar.
Time. Yeah, that is
my goodness.
The best pace we have seen for this. Tied with Wunderbar. Very, very impressive.
That's the bounce back that we're really needing to see out of them as they take that win. And this is it, Tettles. Everything's going to be on the line as they're tied up 1-1.
I love that Deplete from Beyond was able to bounce back from all the problems that they were having earlier on in the weekend. That Siege of Boralus looked impressive, especially since we've seen him play Siege of Boralus a couple of times thus far, and it did not look that good. They can absolutely save 30 more seconds off their timer if they're able to get the Dread Captain Lockwood clap perfected. There is some optimizations in the Deplete from Beyond route that allows them to go even faster than what we just saw.
Yeah, and that's really what we're going to be looking at going forward is what are these little areas that they can start making a couple of improvements on because, what if whoever wins on this point, Nagura is going to have to go on to face Golden Guardians and potentially have to go after Wunderbar after that. So it's not just about this round, it's about everything afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, this Siege of Boralus strategy that Deplete from Beyond just showed, it's the exact same time that Wunderbar had in Siege as well. So I think almost no team had the same time, except Golden Guardians, of course, who just barely lost against them earlier in the series. But all the other teams were just like a minute slower than Wunderbar's strats, or maybe even 2 minutes slower. So having the exact same time in this Siege is super impressive by Deplete from Beyond. And as Tettles mentioned, if they just have some more refines here and there with the clapping strat on Dread Captain Lockwood, then they're going to make up even more time, and they can really beat those kind of teams like Wunderbar and Golden Guardians, in my opinion.
That's right, and Siege of Boralus is going to be in the grand finals as part of the map pool. So, Tettles, what made this run so amazing for them?
So, first and foremost, I thought the opening scenario from Perplexed was actually just a best case scenario for them. I thought they were able to pull the first boss immaculately quick, just with how they were dealing with it because of how Alliance side Boralus ends up working out. Then they end up doing just this gargantuan pull after the third boss. I think their downfall started to be whenever they played this Malthir Obelisk that you see on screen right there. I think that they need to be able to play triple Obelisk into Vic Goth. Perplexed, again, then gets the clap route on Lockwood, but the back half of their strat was just not great for Alliance side Siege of Boralus. Whereas for Deplete from Beyond, their back half strat after Lockwood was incredibly fast and incredibly well refined. That triple obelisk also helped propel them to success. Them also playing Horde after they kill Hadal the gate drops immediately versus Perplexed having to wait there for 20 seconds, kind of AFK, twiddling their thumbs. But Deplete from Beyond just immediately gets to run all the way through, so a huge advantage of Horde Boralus here. And then from there on out, again, like I talked about a second ago, triple obby here. They play it off perfectly and are able to just look so clean in the Siege of Boralus. I'm super happy with how they performed today.
That's right, and this goes to show that this team really isn't out of it at this point. We've talked a number of times, Nagura, where, Deplete from Beyond can be really polarizing in a lot of their performances, and right here they're trying to do everything they can to put those doubts about their performance to bed.
Yeah, and I mean, the last game of the series is going to be Motherlode, and Motherlode is definitely one of those dungeons where things can go really wrong very early on, and we've seen 11 deaths by Deplete from Beyond, but we've also seen Perplexed make mistakes here where they didn't manage to do that first pull properly with the Peacekeepers, and they lost to complexity limit in that dungeon. And Deplete from Beyond actually already played it twice. The second time they played it, they improved incredibly compared to their first match, where they had a 15:09 time. So definitely have a really fast strategy if they pull it off there.
That's true. All right, let's take a look at our stats as well, Tettles. What do we got for this one?
So yeah, the average completion time, of course, these two teams being from the European region, we're competing against one another. So it's easier to just gauge average completion time and average deaths against one another. Again, Perplexed with the immaculately higher win rate in Motherlode, but they didn't look so hot in the Motherlode earlier on in this tournament. So while the win rate would lead you to suggest that Perplexed should be the favorite here, I would be leaning more towards like a 50-50 in terms of who I genuinely think will end up winning this map in the Motherlode.
What do you think about this one, Drados? 50-50?
Yeah, I think that this one, so Deplete from Beyond has had 2 Motherlodes, and one went great and one went bad. Perplexed has had 1 Motherlode, and it went medium bad. I think it's really just going to be about which version of each team shows up today, because I think that there's a huge range of results that are all possible from both teams in this dungeon.
Theoretically, I think Perplexed has the faster route and like the faster decision making on how they're going to end up playing the dungeon, but consistency wise, can they hit it and can they look good?
Yeah, and are they able to really sustain it throughout game after game after game if they do get past this point as well? Because whoever wins this next round is going to be having just a ton of extra dungeons to be doing for the rest of the day. And speaking of more stats, we also have one, Nagura, for Mogul Razdunk too.
Yeah, Mogul Razdunk also one of those bosses that in itself probably shouldn't be an issue for them, but because they are making it so much harder on themselves with how they are playing the boss and kiting the obelisk and whatnot, it's just so much more difficult for those teams. And we've seen so many things go wrong with that kiting strat, and we know that Deplete from Beyond is playing the kiting strat where they have those 4 obelisks that the healer is just running around in a circle basically. And we've already seen this weekend that lots of those awaken mobs can snap back to the rest of the group, and then it just causes disaster, and it's just going to be a full team wipe if that happens.
That's right, and we looked at how these teams and how these players have really gotten better and better at kiting, but at the end of the day, there's still mistakes that can happen, and Perplexed definitely is no stranger to them. But I also think in some cases they've learned a lot as well, Dranos, as to like when they need to just put their nose to the grindstone and keep pushing to make one strategy work, whether they're saying, all right, let's call an audible, let's take care of an obelisk first, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, that's one of the really impressive things about the MDI, because the teams don't just play these 1 dungeons. They have 12 to prepare for and all this practice time to like portion between them. That makes it really, really difficult for them to decide exactly what to practice and what to learn to do.
That's right. Let's see how their practice is going to be paying off for them as our final round between these two teams gets underway in the Motherlode.
All right, so we already see a similar strategy. We see the warriors just run through, tagging the mobs, and we see the hunters go different paths. Basically, what is happening right here is that the hunters are going around this area, tagging the mech jockeys so they jump into the peacekeepers, and Divine Field also just trying to tag as many jockeys as possible. Then they go into this first boss room area, and Feign Death / Shadow Melt off the aggro from all of the mobs that are not the Peacekeepers. So the Peacekeepers will walk to them, which not only give the percentage from the Peacekeeper themselves, but also from the mech jockey that jumped into the Peacekeeper. And the rest of the trash group reset because of the Feign Death / Shadow Melt that they used.
Yeah, you can see both teams with the exact same plan here. Huge amounts of Peacekeepers all running here at the same time. It's actually a very precise strategy because you need to hit a Shadow Meld within a very precise window of a few seconds because it needs to be early enough that the Peacekeeper hasn't been piloted in yet, but late enough that nobody else's has yet been either. So it's pretty dangerous here what these teams are up to, but they've managed to perfect this to an extent. We've seen it go wrong a few times so far this weekend.
Definitely have seen it go wrong, but it looks like both Perplexed and Deplete from Beyond did refine this strategy, and it looks like both of them did pull it off. At least they pulled off the Shadow Melt / Feign Death. They still could wipe to this boss because the Peacekeepers do a lot of damage. That's why Divine Field and Rentari are just kiting around the room. Thankfully, they do not attack the tank all the time because they stand still to cast his shield, which can be a problem if you have affixes like Sanguine, but thankfully no Sanguine this time around, so they don't have to worry about this, but they still have to worry about which direction the shield is being casted in, because it will prevent the damage dealers to do damage, so they definitely want to make sure that shields are all being casted in the same direction.
Yeah, they don't need to worry about it too much as long as everything is dead by the time the boss dies. It doesn't really matter whether it dies, when the boss is at 50% health or whether the boss is at 10% health. That's the most important bottleneck here in the dungeon is just when the boss dies. So you can see on the side of Perplexed, 10% health on the boss as the last Peacekeeper has just fallen. They are a little bit ahead of where Deplete from Beyond is at, but not by that much. It's a very close game so far.
It also looks like Deplete from Beyond does have a little bit less percentage, as there's only one Peacekeeper left they have to do. And yeah, so 2% difference here in trash. Looked like Perplexed maybe had some more extra trash that it pulled on top, which is not a huge difference here. It is teaming, so everything does give a little bit less percentage, but as long as Deplete from Beyond doesn't have to do one extra pull, it is still basically the same.
Here we see both teams doing a fairly large pull in this area. Actually, it looks like Perplexed may be going smaller than Deplete from Beyond. Yeah, they are. Deplete from Beyond is doing everything here all at once. So this is an opportunity for them to skyrocket into the lead here. They are doing what Perplexed just did in 2 pulls. Deplete from Beyond trying to do in 1. Look at all of those debuffs on Rentari, though. He's taking huge amounts of damage. That Life Cocoon gets eaten through very quickly. This is so scary, but they've managed to do it. They've managed to kill all these mobs, and that is going to give them a huge advantage here. They are definitely ahead at this point because they've found a way to remove a pull from the dungeon.
Yeah, that was actually a crazy pull. And you saw how low Rentari dropped there. Now they do have those 2 drillers that jump out of the excavators, but it's actually not a big deal because they are going to skip to the boss anyway here. So they're all running towards the boss, and then they will just Feign Death / Shadow Melt off the aggro, not only from the trash that is skipped, but also from those drillers that are very inefficient to kill because they don't actually give any percentage. Perplexed, on the other hand, looks like they're dealing with the obelisk here, which is very interesting because unless they use it to skip only? No, it looks like they're actually playing it.
So Perplexed is going to be fighting obelisks with the last boss, whereas Deplete from Beyond is going to be doing that kite strategy. And that is definitely a difference between the 2 teams here. I think that the kite strategy has a faster potential time. So I think that if Deplete from Beyond is able to actually do their thing, then they should be able to win here. But their thing is a little bit harder to do.
Yeah, definitely a little bit harder to do. We see Deplete from Beyond fighting Astaroth now. 49%, so you can see Perplexed is quite a bit ahead on trash. I mean, Deplete from Beyond also pulls trash on top of Astaroth, so they'll catch up a little bit, but still a little bit in favor for Perplexed.
Yeah, because Perplexed is going to be able to pull that trash onto Astaroth as well, and you can see that there, the Taskmaster pull. Yeah. So they're opening up a little bit of a trash lead here, but 50% of a Tyrannical boss is a large difference, and I think I'd rather be on Deplete from Beyond's side of this, although you have to factor in the fact as well that, that Awakened Obelisk being gone is that is a large benefit too for Perplexed.
Yeah, and you have to also keep in mind that Deplete from Beyond, of course, has to get 100% trash before they reach the last boss, while Perplexed, because they're playing the obelisk with the last boss instead of kiting, they can probably skip quite a bit later on, because they get that extra trash percentage from finishing off those awakened mobs. And they gain Smog's DPS on the boss because Smog doesn't have to kite those 4 awakened mobs. So I think this is definitely still a close game between those two teams, even though it looks like Deplete from Beyond is ahead. The trash difference and the difference in strategies could still mean that Perplexed can make it back into this game. And again, both of those teams 0 deaths so far. Incredibly clean run by both of them.
Yeah, this is a very impressive showing from both of these teams. Honestly, they both have shown what it takes, I think, to be competitive with Wunderbar and with Golden Guardians here. So whoever wins this is going to be a worthy challenger for the Golden Guardians in our next match. This has been just remarkable showing from both teams.
Yep, definitely. Deplete from Beyond now downed Asrock. They are moving on. You can see Deplete from Beyond actually running triple Dwarf Racial on their Hunters. While, oh yeah, Perplexed actually doing the same. So we see the Dwarves being run instead of the Night Elves. Now, of course, they do have Feign Death, so they don't need that Shadow Melt that we see on almost everyone else. We see Rentari and Igloo also running that Shadow Melt and using it right there. As they skip the trash to the boss, we see Rixa Flexflame standing there in the middle. The Hunters are going around to misdirect those War Machines on top of Rentari. And we've seen them have some trouble here in this boss. Because the trash on top of Rixa can be very dangerous, not only for Rentari, you see how low he's dropping here at the very get-go, but also for the rest of the team if that charge smash is going on anyone but Rentari.
Yeah, this is a really dangerous pull for Deplete from Beyond here. We've seen a lot of things go wrong for teams with these 2 War Machines with Rixa. Look what's happening to Rentari's health. Oh my goodness, the Life Cocoon does come out though, and he will be saved for now. This is such a scary moment, though, as a Protection Warrior is tanking all this stuff. Meanwhile, you can see Perplexed is pulling some trash instead. They get to pull this trash because they do not have to pull all of the VMZ because they're not doing that kiting strategy. Deplete from Beyond, meanwhile, they have to pull all the stuff from that last quarter of the dungeon, the VMZ, because they need it all clear so that Igloo can do the kite in that whole space.
Yeah, and that trash is usually not the trash you want to pull. Most live server groups don't want to deal with any of that trash except the one that is around the obelisk. But those MDI teams have decided to just clear that whole area because of that kiting strat, because they think it is more efficient to kite the obelisk instead of playing them. And it definitely can be incredibly dangerous to deal with the awaken mobs on the last boss, just because there's so many things they need to be aware of on the last boss. Not only the Gatling gun that they need to dodge, which does a huge amount of damage if you don't manage to go around it, but also you have the missiles as well that need to be dodged. So if you have any sort of area of denial happening from the awaken mobs with the Dark Fury and with the pools that the blood spawns, it can make it just this much more difficult to dodge the abilities from the boss.
I actually think the Perplexed is ahead here. They are almost at 100% trash
I think so
count.
as well, yeah.
Yeah, and Deplete from Beyond needs a lot of trash here. So even though they're killing Rixa 60% ahead of where Perplexed is, that is not, I think, worth the huge trash differential that we're seeing now. Perplexed can just kill Rixa, and then they can run to the last boss, Shadow Meld and Feign Death, and pull the last boss with those 3 awakened enemies, and they are done with this dungeon. So Deplete from Beyond in this final 50% of Perplexed killing Rixa Flexflame, in order to catch up, probably needs to be able to do the entire trash zone here.
Yep, and they're probably going to do it in 2 pulls. It's just too much for them to pull everything at once. That's why we see them just gather all of this trash on the right side. So 2 trash pulls still left for Deplete from Beyond. While Perplexed, as you mentioned, the last percentage that they need is going to be from those 3 obelisks. So after this boss, they can run to the last boss and just start fighting. They don't need any extra trash. They are done right after this. Now, they don't have Bloodlust available yet, which can cause some issues for them, because not having Bloodlust for those 3 awakened mobs at the start of the fight makes it even more dangerous.
Yeah, that is a very scary moment. They will get the Bloodlust back in the middle. Actually, you know what? They have another trash pull here. They might just about have Lust on pull. Perplexed.
I don't think they have to pull trash, right?
Deplete from Beyond is going to have to pull some trash. Yeah, Perplexed does not. So you're right, yeah. Because Perplexed is trying to deal with those obelisks, yeah, they're going to have to delay this Bloodlust. That is good news, though. That means they are reaching this boss at the 10-minute marker here. I think that is the fastest that a team has made it to this last boss. I think Perplexed may be on the fastest Motherlode time that we've seen so far.
Yeah, they might very well be, as they are in the last boss area now. They are using their feign deaths to the aggro that trash that they just pulled, and now they're ready to engage. They still have 20 seconds on the Bloodlust. Maybe they decide to
Are they
wait.
waiting
I'm
for
not really
Bloodlust?
sure.
Oh no, they're not.
No,
they're
not.
going right in
They're
here. They'll
engaging
lust
the
when it
lust.
becomes
There you
available.
go.
Yeah. Here come those awakened enemies, and these awakened enemies are kind of dangerous on this fight in particular, but the triple hunter composition is really good at dealing with all these things. They have the turtle for the fear, they have the ability to move from blood pools no matter where they are, they can dodge the Dark Fury pretty easily, and they can even taunt the Spirit Breaker from Urgroth, so they have really good answers to almost all of the awakened abilities in this fight. It's still difficult though.
Yeah, definitely still difficult. We see Ashine actually using that spot there on the stairs where the missiles actually don't reach from the boss. So that's a position you can use, but the Gatling gun still hits you even if you do stand on the stairs. So that's why he went back inside, making sure he does dodge that Gatling gun. And it also really matters where they position themselves, because the blood of the Corruptor not only spawns a pool below himself, but he also spawns 2 pools below players. That's why they want to make sure they're not in the wrong position to not spawn those pools in a bad spot. And now, unfortunately, the Gatling gun is being casted in a really bad position. There's no way for them to dodge it, so they just had to run through that Gatling gun, and Smok needed to out-heal it. They are almost done with their wake-em-ups, though. Only the blood left. And once the blood is left, they should be able to finish off this boss easily. So, incredibly done here by Perplexed on that Awaken pool.
Meanwhile, Deplete from Beyond, they are doing their kiting strategy here. Everybody who is still in the boss platform is just in so much danger because they don't have a healer here with them. Mogul Razdunk slightly lower than it is for Perplexed, but now Perplexed just has the Mogul as well, and they have an extra player to do damage here. So the Bloodlust also not yet been used by Deplete from Beyond. That is so they're going to have the Bloodlust probably after the intermission or maybe during the intermission to get out of that phase as quickly as possible. Perplex already used that Bloodlust, and that is a difference between these two strategies. Perplex just fired it off once it became available. Wow, look how low everybody's health is on Deplete from Beyond, but a huge burst of healing coming out from all of those Mechagon bit band combos and the acceleration of clicks there.
So both of the bosses, basically for both teams, just jumped into the air, starting that intermission at the very same second. They're so close to each other, and you see the 0 deaths for both teams as well. Now, the difference in DPS is going to matter so much, not only in this intermission phase, but also in that second phase. Now, Deplete from Beyond having the Bloodlust definitely means they're going to be able to nuke the boss
it's Bloodlust
faster,
versus the healer.
Versus the healer DPS, yeah, exactly.
That is going to be the difference here.
They have to use less defensives as well, because the hunters and Deplete from Beyond, they have to make sure they stay alive, because they don't have a healer to heal them.
How's Dr. J going to live this? I don't know if he can. He doesn't have Turtle. He's in an Eye of Corruption. Okay, he somehow is able to live there. I think that may have been a natural dodge for Dr. J to live that drill smash. I'm not 100%
think that's what happened?
But I believe that is what has just happened for Deplete from Beyond. Wow, if they win as a result of that, that will be wild. But here it is. Here's the
so
Bloodlust.
low.
There it is, 26% on Mogul Razdunk for Deplete from Beyond. They have the Bloodlust, 18% though for Perplexed. Look at these two bosses. They are melting, and this is going to be neck and neck between these two teams. 2% now separating these two boss health totals. There are no deaths for either team. 10%. The bosses are on the same percentage. It will all come down. Now it is Deplete from Beyond who's ahead. Deplete from Beyond killing this boss slightly faster with that Bloodlust. Oh, they're going to be able to kill Deplete from Beyond.
Oh my god, it's Deplete from Beyond who made it!
Misty Igloo came back. He ran up the ramp, came back, popped way of the crane, added some extra damage, and another 2-second victory. Oh my goodness. Deplete from Beyond's go to the lower finals. What?
Wow. Dr. J really dodged that smash?
It's the natural
I
dodge,
think that was the natural
That
dodge.
happened?
So
Hunter,
He didn't have Turtle.